Hey everyone, TJ Aulds, i45Now, and welcome to our ongoing coverage of elections 2020, the election that seems to never want to end in some cases. And this time around, as we kick off the next phase of things, as we head into runoffs across our region. Our first of our forums tonight feature the runoff elections in the city of League City. And we're going to be having on with us tonight two of the candidates in the runoff, one from the District 4, the Position 4 race in League City, John Bowen, in from Position 5, the top vote getter of the Position 5 race the first time around, and then in the runoff, Justin Hicks. And we'll talk more about that in just a little bit. But as always, we partner with the League City Regional Chamber of Commerce, a great partner in the community and a great partner with us here at i45Now. And DeJuan Claiborne, the president and CEO of the League City Regional Chamber of Commerce, joins us from his wanky new offices, by the way, over at Walden, there on Main Street. DeJuan, good evening to you.
Good evening, TJ. You're so gracious. Yeah.
No, I want to get in, before we get into talking about tonight here, I want to talk about a fun thing we did yesterday over in League Park with the Chamber and with the city. A great fun event. Folks, hopefully you got the chance to watch it live. It is going to be the 20 days of Christmas here, starting off the Christmas shopping season and promoting shopping local, and particularly shopping with local businesses, locally owned businesses. Do you want to talk about that? Because this is an important thing, particularly after everything we've been through with COVID this year.
Yes. So we are trying to promote and tell our businesses in the community to patronize our local business here in League City. So we're highlighting 20 unique business owners that you can only find here in League City. And guess what? They are a part of the chamber, they're supporting the chamber, and they are making sure that they are always telling people to shop local, because for every $100 spent, $67 is reinvested back in the community. And that's how we get local control. That's how we promote economic development. And that's how we show that we're stronger together. So you don't have to be in League City. You can be in surrounding areas all around. Come to League City. We have some unique businesses that I promise you will be impressed with.
And one of the there's an actual kind of shopping guide, not only in print, but also digitally, and an app. Tell folks about that as well.
Yeah, so there's a shopping guide that you can come by the chamber. You can go by any city business, city hall, their library. You can pick up a shopping guide, or you can visit our app. It's called Visit League City. It's the app that has all upcoming events, things that are going around the city, good hotels, restaurant. We actually have a brand new Fairfield that's a high-end business and hotel living here in League City, just opened this year. So find out about all the new things and what's going on in League City on our Discover League City app. It's a virtual world we're in, TJ, right? So we have to adapt.
That's it. Also, too, one of the things, you get that app and you go in, you save 20% when you get the app, you go into these businesses. Right.
Yeah, you save 20% when you shop local. So not only are you being economical, but you're shopping local and you're supporting small businesses, because at the end of the day, small businesses are the heartbeat of our community. And so if we want to discuss revitalizing and jumpstarting our community, it starts with our small businesses. So if you aren't shopping local and shopping small, I don't know what to say, but you are missing out, because at the end of the day, that's who we are. So that's my heartbeat. That's the chamber's heartbeat. So we're all about shopping local. Thank you, TJ.
Yeah, and also too, successful membership blitz. I got to make sure I get the right term, you guys.
Yes.
61 or 62 new members?
62 new members in 4 hours. So I want somebody to measure and calculate that. I know these candidates that are running, they got the answers to a lot of equations that are going on here in our area. So so we're excited, we're blessed, we're pumping all businesses, and we're happy to be the chamber and be the forefront resource and the conduit for commerce in our region.
Great. DeJuan Claiborne, he is the president and CEO of the League City Chamber of Commerce. DeJuan, thanks for coming on with us here tonight. We appreciate, as always, partnering with the chamber on these forums.
Thank you, TJ. We appreciate you.
All right, Dewan, thanks for coming on with us. We appreciate it. And now we get into the business at hand, and that brings us to our runoff forum tonight. There are 4 candidates vying for 2 positions in League City Council. The runoff coming up in December. Early voting actually starts November the 30th, we should point out. So a little bit earlier than we expect. So you get Thanksgiving week off, and then you got to get ready to really fully get out there and vote. Joining us from position 4, one of the candidates, John Bowen, and then for position 5, the top vote getter in that race, Justin Hicks. We should point out that Rachel McAdam, who is the top vote getter in the position 4 race, and Wes Torn, who is the candidate in position 5, both declined to take part in the forum tonight. Wes said he had business obligations that took him away after taking some time off for elections. And Rachel had just straight out declined. We did offer date changes and the like because we were going to do separate forums for each of these. I just want to be fully upfront here. We tried to work with them to accommodate schedules and everything else, and it just wouldn't work out. But we feel it was important still to let everyone know about this and hear from the candidates. The candidates this time around, as we have our format normally is it's a question and answer session with the candidates, and we go through tonight. But we have done a little bit different on this one. We have broken it down in 5 subject matters that we're going to be going through, 4 subject matters we'll be going through tonight. They're broken down in this way, and that we're going to try to keep the 10 to 15 minutes. And it's business growth and revitalization, transportation, flood and drainage, and expansion of city amenities. That's everything from parks, recreation, the library, and Big League Dreams and the like as well, so we can focus in on those 4 subjects. We talked about flood and drainage, obviously, and transportation last time, but it gives us a chance to get further down into this subject. And then as we wrap up things at around 7 o'clock tonight, we give each of the candidates a chance to make their final pitch to you before you go out and vote. So I did a flip of a coin here, and Justin, you got to go first here on this. Let me just go right straight into the question about business revitalization and business growth. We just had Dewan Claiborne on. We talked about the small businesses that we have to help out in this Christmas season. Christmas season is important, particularly those around Founders Park down in League City and right in Founders Square, I should say. But more so maybe this year because of the earlier shutdowns. Word coming from Governor Greg Abbott today. Listen, he's not going to push for another shutdown. He's asking for curbing of people's behaviors to help out. But if you were elected to council, what will you push for initiative-wise that can help these businesses in the long run? Because recovery won't be just over one particular season.
Okay, Oates, thank you, TJ. And before I answer the question, I do want to put out prayers and get well wishes to Mayor Pat and Janice. And also, I want to thank you and Dewan for what you do during election season. I know you guys work hard, so thank you. So me as a council member, the first thing that I think that we need to do is we need to protect the citizens and the business owners from further shutdowns and capacity reduction. League City is the largest city in Galveston County, and we need to get behind the county and fight against it if the if the state starts doubling down on these mandates. And I'm one person with courage that will get behind that.
And how so? I mean, obviously, if the governor has resisted doing anything, but right now, as it stands under those emergency orders from Governor Abbott, if certain stats hit, restaurants that are at a certain capacity and bars that are at a certain capacity will see those trail back by governor's orders. And until the legislature gets in, that may be something we may be facing.
Right. And so Galveston County is conservative strong, I believe. I think we showed that in this election. And I think we need to get behind our good judge, Mark Henry, and utilize our resources like attorneys if we need to do that. And I will certainly stand behind that. I'll be honest with you, TJ, I don't know all the answers on that, not being on a legislative body. But, we just need people with courage that are going to stand up for the citizens and the small businesses. And that's what I'm prepared to do.
I'll tell you more of a kind of a bully pulpit too, to make sure you're just putting out that call. Is that one way you could do it for sure?
Say that again.
As a bully pulpit, more along the lines of speaking up and maybe not necessarily forcing the hand of the state versus the city and the like, but more of a bully pulpit type of a sounding board for the community.
Right, exactly. So one council member doesn't have all the power. A mayor doesn't have all the power. It funnels up. but it really does start at the lowest level, and somebody that will actually listen to your concerns, use their resources, and use their connections to, to try to fight against this.
Justin Hicks, he was the top vote getter in the first round of the election for position 5 League City Council. He'll be in the runoff in joining us. If those of you just joined us in partnership with the League City Regional Chamber of Commerce, I'm TJ Aulds, i45Now, with our runoff candidates forum featuring Justin Hicks from position 5 and from position 4, John Bowen. The other candidates, Rachel McAdam from position 4 and Wes Chorn from position 5, declined to participate in our forum tonight. So John, let me go to you. Same question here as we talk about from a council seat, if elected, what will you look at as ways to help boost local, the local business community, particularly in wake of what we've had to go through in 2020 with the COVID-19 shutdowns and the curbs on how much business can be done?
Okay. Well, there's one thing that we need to point out. Tax revenue for the city hasn't declined. And it's a big issue because initially we thought that the sales tax revenue was going to go down because of inactivity and people being locked down. What we've noticed is large big box stores are generating excessive sales tax revenue because they're open and they're available to shoppers. Where we're seeing the decline is in the small businesses, in the mom and pop shops. We've had an inconsistent approach on how businesses are operated or curtailed in their operation, I should say. Bars, for instance, are treated differently than restaurants when, if you look at the business models themselves, they're very similar in operation. They can do their social distancing. They're still consuming liquids or foods or whatever, but there's really no difference when you look at it that way. So one of the things that I'd really like to see, and this is, in conjunction with the chamber, but a town hall, an open forum with these small businesses. I think that the best place to get business answers is from the business people that are trying to run their businesses. They know what they need from a standpoint, much more than the city or any individual can. Even some of the business owners on council don't have businesses that are directly impacted by a retail customer that we're seeing.
And in fact, John, you and I have talked in many years of the sales tax proposals and with the European Economic Development and the like. And one of the things that's kind of come up is that I know this is consistent with what you've said about is having the ear of local businesses. A lot of times, the people sitting at the table are not those businesses most affected by a lot of decisions.
Exactly.
I think we saw that as an example with folks that went up to Austin after the governor's orders, whether it's bar owners or it was small mom and pop stores. Yes, the Best Buys of the world and Home Depot and Lowe's and those companies, and Walmart particularly, those companies are going to do well because they have the infrastructure to make a turn, to do curbside, they were already doing where you can order online. But I was at a Nets Emporium, for example, yesterday in Founder Square. And I can just tell you, Net's been around in business a long time. She has very unique items, great items, all made in the USA, everything else. But if you try to order online, there's not that curbside service. She'll do what she can, but it's her and her worker there. So what can the city do more besides just giving an ear to help out those businesses on their infrastructure and the like too, maybe?
Well, like you said, the big box stores can afford their own representation. I think it's incumbent on the city to work with, be the representation for these small businesses when it comes to discussions in Austin or in the county. They're taxpayers too. They may or may not be members of the chamber. The chamber is a great voice for small business. But at this point, we're looking at protecting all the businesses in League City, not necessarily just those that are members of the chamber. And, that's why I think that the town halls bringing these business owners together is very important. And listening to them, finding out where their hindrances are in operating their businesses day to day.
If you're just joining us, we have John Bowen, who is a candidate in the runoff for position 4 League City Council. He is scheduled to face Rachel McAdam in that runoff. Rachel had declined to take part in this tonight, said after first agreeing and then saying she had scheduling conflicts. They could not make it. And then also joining us is Justin Hicks, who was the top vote getter in the position 5 race before the runoff, and now is in the runoff against Wes Chorin. Wes Chorin has several businesses, including an insurance business that he's signing up folks for Medicare Part D, and the deadlines are coming up, and he has it across the country and says he can't participate because he's having to catch up for what he missed during the campaign. John, let me stay with you on this, and Justin, I'll come to you on the next kind of phase of talking about this. One of the things is, John, you had pointed out that income to the city from sales tax revenue has not declined, because folks were still going to the grocery store, they were still going to the Walmarts, they were still going to the box stores and the like, and so that has not declined. I wonder if we take a look at things, because this is where a city could step in, could it be time that the city may need to look at a sales tax rebate for small businesses or businesses overall along the line to help out these businesses, if anything, to encourage maybe infrastructure improvements for digital technology or something along those lines? Would that be, they do it for big businesses to bring them in all the time, but what along that lines would you support as a council member to see to help those small businesses out?
I think the approach at this stage of the game, because it's had such a devastating financial impact on businesses, is an all above approach. We definitely should look at, a rebate maybe on taxes. We should also look at, like the 20 days of shopping that we the chamber has done, and then advertising and promotional endeavor through the League City communications department. Sheriff Greer Osborne does an exceptional job at, doing promotions and so forth. And, even spending a little extra money in advertising for these small businesses to attract more attention, get people to stop off of 45 on their way to Galveston and so forth. But this is, we want to keep these businesses around a long time. They're ultimately all good for us, from the nail shops that, pay taxes, either property tax through their landlords if they don't own the property, to the sales tax they generate. All these businesses contribute to the well-being of the city.
Justin, how about is there something, that extra step that could be taken to help out particularly the small businesses here, maybe using some type of tax break, tax incentive, and John said the all or above approach, because there are going to be some laws that, you can't carve out for businesses under so many and that type of thing, but maybe there's something to be done with an overlay district that already exists or something like that.
Right. So first of all, it's funny that you would mention the sales tax rebates, because that was something when I first came out, when I was doing my best to study small businesses, not fully understanding how the city works, admittedly, and how these things, but yes, I would be in favor of a sales tax rebate. We really need to help these people out. I know a lot of people that have been running off of PPP right now, and to the best of my knowledge, that's dried up at this point. So they've been having to take jobs outside of their skill sets and lesser paying jobs than their, than what they normally had with their small businesses. As far as a step above, I really think that the step above is to, protect them from being shut down again. That is the step above. We need people with backbones and courage that are going to stand up for these people, and that's what I provide.
Yeah, and that's something that I think a lot of folks have said that they had not heard of, having the seat at the table when these decisions are made along the way. Let's talk about that in just general business revitalization in League City. And Justin, staying with you on this subject matter here, just non-COVID-19 related, there has been an argument over the years about development slowing it down, whether it's housing or the retail side of things as well. And what is your approach of how economic development should be approached in the city of League City?
So my personal belief is that we do need more commercial economic development around here to take a little bit of the burden off of the taxpayers. I think that there is an equation that goes along with the multiple projects that we're going right now. I think that there's a speed. I don't think it's a black and white answer. I think that it's a case-by-case basis. Like for instance, I'll bring up the 7-Eleven issue from the last council meeting, sitting on the corner of 518 and Newport. And I'll go ahead and take a hard stance and say, I don't think that's really economic development, because that's going to take, there's already 5 service stations right there. You don't need another one. It doesn't bring any new revenue. is basically what I'm saying. So I look at everything on a case-by-case basis. What's the revenue implications, and what is the implications on the city and the other projects that are going on right now? Is it going to increase traffic? Is it going to dump water on somebody? And if they check those boxes, then I'm for it. If they don't check the boxes, then I'm not.
Let me ask you, one of the things that has always been often debated is when, whether it was Ineos or others who have come in and say, we're going to locate our headquarters here, and then there's a tax incentive offered to them to develop or to move into an office space there, and they're given some type of incentive through the EDC or the city at large. Do you some people call that corporate welfare, others would call it incentive, business incentives. Either way you define it, do you support that type of approach to draw businesses into town?
So, I think that incentives are also case-by-case basis, but also I'm not for full abatements, a full-blown formal abatement. I'm not for that. I think that kind of rakes the city over the coals, in all fairness, because, if we're going to allow a business to be there, we need to be generating that revenue and take it off the taxpayers. But incentives, yeah, to an extent, like I said, everything's a case-by-case basis.
Gotcha. John, to you, the questions on economic revitalization and how to deal with economic development overall in the city of League City. What first kind of explain your vision, where you stand on how a city is supposed to approach economic development?
Well, I think that, the primary things that a city can do is offer a safe location, offer, a desirable location, not only for the business itself, but potentially for its employees. As far as investing in businesses to get them to come here, we need to be very careful. We've had some excessive investments in business, I would say, like Cabela's. I think, we've foregone 10 years worth of sales tax revenue from them to get them to move here after a substantial infrastructure investment. And I think those things, as Justin did say, case by case basis, but we need to make sure that, what the business is bringing to the city is justifiable, and it's still going to add to the tax base of the city in a substantial way. Because if we're foregoing 10 years worth of tax revenues, or all but all the tax revenues for a period of time like that, we need a commitment, that it's going to also offer high paying jobs, because ultimately the high paying jobs will help, spread the tax base around, to higher end housing and so forth. It's not just getting a commercial or retail business to establish here. It's what else they're going to bring to us. Is it, if they're going to locate their corporate headquarters here, but 85% of the employees are going to live in Clear Creek or Clear Lake area and not necessarily in League City, that's something that, should factor into any decision that's made.
And how about on the approach of, and I think I know where some of this will go, but I want the voters to hear this on your approach you said it needs to be a measured approach, but when you have a company saying, we want to relocate here, we would like to have an abatement, is that a non-starter with you, or is that something case by case, or how does that?
I don't think anything having a business looking at relocating to League City should be a non-starter for some type of incentive. I'm not going to say a zero incentive on every case for sure. Again, you have to weigh out the entire picture that the business that wants to locate here is offering the city, as well as what the city can offer the business. We have a great fire department, but if they're looking to put in a high rise that's going to tax our ladder equipment, and we've seen that in the past with South Shore Harbor, where they helped us invest in a elevation equipment to get to those levels that may be in trouble in a fire situation. So that all those things have to be factored in when the business and when the city decide on, number one, location. Is it the best use of the location as far as property tax situation? We have UTMB, great facility, but it's in one of the best commercially developable areas with little to no tax revenue from that location. I'm not saying we shouldn't have a hospital. I'm just saying maybe we should have looked for other areas potentially that could have where we could have used that commercial development area right on 45 as a better use in tax revenue generator.
And speaking of that, and we'll stay with you, John, is that, that area around the UTMB League City campus there, and MD Anderson there, that, and it's been called different things, whether it's the Epic Center or whatever, the Epic Project, or, Pinnacle Park across the way, and
Right.
not any particular park, but, there's been, moving ahead, the city's moving ahead with the plans, and we'll touch on some of this with the parks across the way, but that's supposed to be some incentives to get a commercial development going there. Obviously, with economy changes and the like. So what proposed maybe 4 years ago becomes something different, and the like. And that happens in developments all the time, quite frankly. But that's one where a grandiose announcement is made. A lot, is going to happen, and then the paperwork doesn't get filed, and certain deadlines aren't met. And if those type of things are hit, what would you do on council to make sure to hold people's feet to the fire who come and make an agreement here? Because there always seems to be, and I'm not talking about one particular development here. There always seems to be the whole grandiose idea. I get a deal, and then I'm going to go and sell that to investors. And then when they come back later, well, I want to change it now because I can't get it this way. It's always kind of the hat in hand type of approach. As a council member, how would you approach someone who keeps coming back and asking for changes to those existing agreements and those type of things?
Well, I consider a business developer, a prospector, if you will. They go in with an idea that, they want to dig a hole like a gold mine, and they're not sure what they're ultimately going to come up with. I think before the city gets fully behind any initiative like the Epicenter, they need to understand that those plans always change. I mean, unless the city's going to fund it and then do a commercial back end with somebody else, that's not something that's ever going to be locked in stone. And, again, businesses or cities that pick and choose business, winners and losers generally have a pretty bad track record. So yeah, I would never expect the city to fund anything like the Epicenter. We are seeing, like you said, with the parks, where the new park is going to be started under city funding, where initially that was going to be done with the developer. And when I first saw that a couple of years ago, I said, who's going to just give us $7-8 million to build a park before there's any bricks or any buildings that can be utilized in return on that investment.
Right. Justin, same question to you there related to the fact of, and John just touched on it, is that, there are parts of that agreement that were in place, and we had the same thing with Big League Dreams. We had the same thing with Pinnacle Park. We had the same thing with some of the West Side development stuff. What is initially announced doesn't really happen, and it does happen. Now, development changes year to year. I know myself when I made the announcement of what I45Now is going to be, I changed it 6 months later because the market changed on me. But sometimes you make a pledge, and then not saying you're already coming down the line, and now taxpayer dollars are getting spent on something that wasn't supposed to happen that way in the first place. How would you hold the line on something like that if elected?
Okay, so and I know that I'm not debating John here, but I do want to kind of echo off of his statement about the abatements. I think for me, a full-blown abatement would case-by-case basis, but it would be probably a non-starter for me. We'd have to go back and relook at that. And as far as contracts go, I work in maritime and oil and gas, and changing contracts and changing the scope is a normal thing. And so it's just business. And my basic, theory about that is that it just has to fit. It has to fit. And, you have to comb through it. And this is what I do for a living, in oil and gas. I mean, people come back to us all the time and say, we want a better deal or this, you just have to make it fit.
Yeah. And I would tell you then too, if you're going to make it fit, that you also have to explain to the taxpayers,
right,
why that decision is made. You said that in our first forum, and I'm sure, John, you echo that as well. It's not just that's what happened, right?
Right, exactly. And I would, and our city does do a really, really good job with communications, but I think that goes into some of the next topics I wanted to talk about was, communications and getting that message out, maybe in a little bit better manner where it's more accessible, where, because right now I feel like that people have to know where to go to find the information. And I've learned that throughout my campaign is that it's not readily in front of your face. You have to know where to go to find it. So that is a key factor.
For those of you just joining us, this is an I45Now community forum, candidates forum, featuring the candidates from precinct position 4 and position 5, at least one candidate from each of those. Justin Hicks, the candidate from position 5, League City Council, and John Bowen, position 4 candidate. Rachel McAdam, who is position 4 candidate, declined to participate after trying to get a date scheduled and agreeing to the date officially originally, and then pulled out saying that she had a scheduling conflict. And Wes Korn just couldn't get his schedule worked out. He's actually out of state working, but we tried to accommodate this by being virtual and setting across an hour of time. But we felt it was important to still have this. If you have questions of those candidates, we ask that you ask them straight up. Next topic up is transportation. And nothing gets people's blood boiling as quick as this topic a lot of times. I know today, just coming from the grocery store on Highway 96 near South Shore and cutting over and coming on 270, it was a 20-minute drive to get across on 270, Egret Bay Boulevard. And yes, I'm not the only one that has to deal with that, so I'm not trying to whine. But Justin, let me ask you, where does the city need to be on making transportation priorities better for folks? Because if we're going to keep growing as a city, you got to get from point A to point B a lot faster than 20 minutes to go a mile.
Right. And so, this goes back to the communication. I do want to let the citizens know, anybody that is watching, is that as far as our traffic improvements, there's 14 improvements scheduled over the next 5 years. And I don't think a lot of people know that. And 5 are going to start construction next year. So we've borrowed in bonds over 70 million for the next 5 years. And, sorry, TJ, the screen changed.
Sorry about that. Let me flip it up over here.
That's okay. You threw me off there for a minute.
Sorry about that. Yeah, that's my fault. I swapped out view on everybody there for a second.
Right, and that's what I want people to know is that we need to get behind the city and realize that the city is actually doing something. This bond came from 2019, and I think project management and those bottlenecks in there is the key.
John, let me same question to you: is what can be done on the transportation issues? What are the priorities the city needs to set?
Well, one of the things I think they need to do is, from the point of the bond initiative itself, the scheduling, from what I've seen, is I've gone back and looked at some of the projects that are on the books in the $70+ million, seem to have big gaps from the time of engineering or design to actual construction and implementation. Sometimes there's a small window of land acquisition that's involved, but there still seems to be large windows of time that, that they're not necessarily utilizing. I'm going to bring up the lights along League City Parkway, for instance. That's a pretty simple project. If you ask me, traffic lights is pretty much a no-brainer. But what I've seen in all 4 of those lights that are going along League City Parkway is there's almost a year from the time that design is done until the actual completion period. So we're looking at 3 years from this point, which is over a year after the initial bond initiative, just to get the lights in. So, a 4-year project for 4 lights along League City Parkway. Those are the small things that should happen relatively quickly. I know that we rely on a lot of outside resources for engineering, and I know how contract engineering companies work from, dealing with them in different industries and myself. Maybe that, a lot of the engineers are not dedicated to our projects. They're engineers that we're hiring engineering time, but those engineers are spread over multiple projects, and they have, multiple projects going hand in hand with different delivery times. Some of the things we could look at is actually bringing in contracted engineers for our projects so that they're dedicated to the projects we're working on. Because it's very costly for a city to have dedicated disciplines in different that we need to operate the city. So you don't want to hire them full time if they're not going to be utilized long term. But there are options of bringing them in and having them in-house so that they can be dedicated and working specifically on our projects.
Yeah, you bring up an interesting point, Justin. I'll have you chime in on this as well after I talk to John a little bit more on this. Is I have seen with many, whether it's cities, school districts, or the like, they will go ahead and hire a project manager engineer firm, for example, when they're doing a lot of construction, so that those people are the ones who are dealing day to day with the other folks, and it doesn't take several emails to get a response back, or the small things is that when you're dealing, yes, everyone's trying to do what they can, but when you've got a contractor who is an outside firm, maybe based in Sugar Land versus being based in League City, or is not checking in every day, and you send a phone call and then you get a return, you miss that call and goes back and forth. It can happen locally, but still at the same time, it's like a day or 2 days, and that causes somewhat of a delay. And so would that be something, am I hearing you right? That's something you'd be interested in having, is like finding those firms say, all right, you work for us to ramrod this from point A to point Z.
Right. And we're going to give you an office right here in League City. I mean, we have a lot of, expansion in the utilities department and other buildings and zoning, where we have some extra space that we can put these dedicated people in that are working on our projects in-house and have better control over the deliverables as far as time-wise. Again, I've utilized it in other industries that I've worked in. It seems to, you seem to get a better performance out of the people when you actually have them in-house and you can control them instead of having them work on 4 or 5 different projects at the same time for various vendors or various companies or
right.
cities.
In fact, we see that in the petrochemical industry a lot, particularly in refineries. So when a turnaround that could take a year in some cases, or expansion of a refinery or chemical plant takes place, that's who gets brought. Jacobs or one of those guys gets brought
Right.
in. Justin, I would take, is that, you come from that industry, is that something you support as well?
Okay, so actually what I want to do is, I thought the last time that you had mentioned my name and John went ahead and answered it. So what I'm going to do
No, I said I was going to come to you after I talked to him.
Okay. All right. Well, I had a thought in my head, so I'm going to go ahead and spit it out. So
you got it. No problem.
Right. So as a project manager myself, who's managed millions of dollars in projects and delivered things timely, I would like to piggyback off of John and then go back to something that we talked about in the first, in the first forum, is performance incentives. We never really got to finish that. Is that I think that even if we can't find a local League City contractor and we can't get them dedicated, if we have airtight contracts and performance incentives, we might get the results that we want out of it. And that's the general stance that I take on it.
Yeah, and we did talk not enough of that, and bring it up because it is on the list. I know we talked about, we wanted to get into that some more. So we talk, how do you vision a performance incentive to work? Is it more, because there's different approaches, is here's the carrot at the end, or do you take here's the punishment at the beginning, or is it a combination of both?
I think it's probably a combination of both. And, every contract is written custom when you have stuff like this go along. But I think that they should be tiered, and maybe it could be the carrot at the end as to where you say, okay, completion date, X amount of dollars, and then it tiers down, which naturally creates a penalty for ill performance. We were talking about that last time, but that's the way that I would see those contracts going down. I mean, of course, I'm not the city attorney. Normally when I do contracts, I don't get into the legalese information. I get into the meat and the potatoes, the T&Cs of the contract. And that's typically the decisions that I make. And that's how I would look at it.
You just want to know, where do I need to, what's my goal end and make it, right?
Yep. That's it. I think, there needs to be clear milestones. And then I think the city needs to communicate with, and John knows about these. I know John's had a pseudo similar pass to me, is Gantt charts, and make those readable to the average person for the city so that we know where we're at.
And update it on a regular basis.
Yeah, I was going to say,
right.
I'm talking to 2 guys that know what it is to manage projects and see them through. So, in John, I would take it then you're a fan of the, or at least to support putting in some type of incentives and clauses into contracts.
Absolutely. I can't honestly go back into my business past and remember a contract that didn't have a penalty clause and an incentive clause. It's incumbent on the city to set the actual deadline dates that are necessary. And if you can deliver ahead of time, those are opportunity costs. They lessen the impact and trouble on citizens. So you offer a little bit of a bonus for them to finish early. people are happy when they get the projects and roadways out of the way early and they can drive free again. But if they miss a deadline, then they're penalized for it. We missed that opportunity on the original Calder Road, and it took. I just keep going back to that because I could not believe that project was started without some kind of penalty clause in it. And we eventually got one in there, but it took a new contractor and a new negotiation of the contract. So
I think if there'd been a clause in there, the city actually would have made a profit off Calder Road
Yeah,
for
yeah.
a while on that project. Yeah, and that's why it always comes back to talking about Calder Road in many ways on those. We talk about the bigger road projects that are going on, and Justin, I'm going to come to you on this one first. Is that, but it still comes down to the city streets for folks. I mean, that's the roads they go down, Colorado, or they go down, Kansas, or they go down, the streets in town that they go down, and they expect those to be kept up as well. And as many miles of streets as the city has. Well, how do you think the city should be maintaining projects as a council member that you would be pushing for public works to keep the regular city streets up to date and in good running condition?
Well, for anything that's not addressed in the bond, I think it all fits budget. I think that we need, it has to fit within the budget, and obviously we don't want our city to get run down. I firmly agree that, from both parties of a side, we all know how to spend money, but I do believe that the conservatives know how to invest. Because when you invest, you do get some kind of return off of that. I certainly don't want my city to be run down. So I'm typically for any, however we got to spend the money, I'm typically for any road improvements.
Would you be in support of and I know you have to look at the budget, but would you be in support of, say, set aside funds every year to replace so many roads or at least miles of regular city street roads?
Sure. Yeah, sure. Sure, absolutely. I live in this city. I love it. It's beautiful, and I certainly don't want it to get run down, and I certainly don't want my truck to hit a pothole and get damaged. I mean, of course, it's a no-brainer for me.
Yeah, all too often I think we see in cities that roads will sit and they'll say, it's okay, and then the pothole goes, and then it just seems
right.
John, I mean, we talk a lot about the big projects, the Calder Roads, the Texas Avenues, and the like, but about those regular city neighborhood streets.
Well, I'll give you a prime example. I live in Meadow Bend in the old section, 35 years old, and our streets were starting to still a little bit of wear. They actually came out and replaced two big sections directly in front of my house. It had nothing to do with me being a councilman or running for council or anything. It happened long before I ever decided that. But I will say the city has an active reinvestment program that's ongoing. You see it in the sidewalk leveling that takes place in a lot of the older developments. You see it in the sections of the street that are replaced that are starting to show wear and age. And that wasn't always there, but in the last few years they have ramped that up, and they're making good progress from my opinion on getting some of those older streets. We're not really an old city, and a lot of our stuff is concrete, so it lasts a lot longer in general than some of the the blacktop roads or macadam roads, whatever you want to call them. But they do wear, they do crack. We do have issues because we love our trees, and our trees are the most horrendous thing on concrete roads and sidewalks. But there's no way in the world that anybody's going to try to take away our trees that keep sidewalks straight or the roads from cracking. So, but the reinvestment program that I've seen the city undertake in the last few years is definitely working, and definitely keep it going.
Right, and I should be fair about that. I didn't want to infer that the city didn't already have a program. It's just that maybe at a point now with the growth that the city is seeing, maybe make it a little more robust. And I should have what I asked Justin earlier, see an increase in that. And this is going to be kind of a curveball question on transportation. But what is the one? I'll start with you, John, and then go to Justin. What is the one transportation issue in each city you don't think gets enough attention in your mind, and what is that, and what would you do about it?
Well, I think the one transportation issue is, I think, our communication with TxDOT. I think that I know that we have very little power over what and when TxDOT actually starts and works their projects, but I think if we could try to alleviate some of the issues of having them work on multiple interchanges at the same time as they impact the city, because they do present, we could sell it as a safety issue because, getting fire equipment or getting police from one side of the city to the other, when all three of the major interchanges from east to west are under construction and, sometimes even closed. I mean, we've had issues where they're closed over the weekends and so forth. And I understand that has to happen, but maybe not all three of them at the same time. I've been in League City for 14 years and seen 96 interchange undergo 3 complete renovations in 14 years. It seems like they build it to the next level, and then within a year or two, they're tearing it back down and making it bigger. And so, that's not League City, that's TxDOT. But those things need to be looked at and possibly scheduled better.
Yeah, if on that subject, I think I could probably show you my string of text messages with TxDOT when those surprise closures come up, because we and the city gets the same updates that we do, and then it's one thing, and then the next day something else has happened, and ask the question of, well, the contractor changed it, and I've always made the argument is whoever that contractor is, they need to have a communications person.
Yeah, exactly.
To draw that. Justin, same question to you. What is the one transportation issue that you don't think gets enough attention that you want to focus on, and what would you do about it?
Okay, so I'm going to answer the question a little bit different from John. Over the last 5 months of campaigning, I've taken in a lot of input from hundreds of people, and there's 3 things that I hear from a lot of people. Look, when I drive and I got to sit at a light, I've got a lot of patience. I'm not in a hurry to go anywhere, so it doesn't bug me a whole lot. I don't like seeing all the construction that's going on right now. We need to finish that up, but so I've heard a lot of complaints about 5 corners that didn't really solve the problem. And I would hate to go back and, have to spend more money for money that we already spent to try to fix that. But I've heard a lot of complaints about 5 corners. It helped minimally. Number 2 is the Hobbs Road connector. I've heard a lot of complaints about that. As a matter of fact, I went out and actually saw it for myself, is that they've raised the grade of that road so high that, one of the forgotten areas of League City, Mary Lane, and around there in Dickinson, it looks like it's going to dump water on them. And I saw it for myself. I'm not a hydrologist or a civil engineer or anything like that, but, I got a lot of common sense, and I looked at it and said, you know what, you're right. That area already floods. And then number 3, when is all this torn up stuff going to be done? That's what I hear from the citizens. Like I said, I'm not a civil engineering expert. I'm not a traffic expert. I'm not a transportation expert, but I do listen to people. And those are probably the 3 biggest things that I've heard.
I wanted to, though, is that, it's one thing to put out a press release. It's one thing to announce it on the city channel. It's one thing to put it on a social media page, but on Neighborhoods Most Effective, and you talked about, and I wanted to give you a chance to expand on that a little bit. You talk about communication. Is that something that needs to be more kind of boots on the ground communication in certain neighborhoods, particularly on transportation issues, you think?
Gosh, I don't know. It just needs to be better. And that is actually something if I get into council that I am going to work on, is how do we make it readily available in your face? And I don't know if we have to spend more money on more mailers out to the people. I'm not really sure how to solve that problem, but I think it is an issue because people, they don't know. They look and they complain, and I hear them. And, me running as a councilman, obviously I go and I look up and research these issues, and, they're right. I have an answer for them, but, you can only answer so many emails and phone calls a day.
Right.
It needs to be mass distributed better. And I don't know how to do that, but we need to levy our resources to do better communication.
Gotcha. And you had mentioned about areas that flood. And that was our next topic, flood and drainage. One topic that got a lot of attention here this last week on some of the Houston news channels, and it's something, by the way, that current Councilman Greg Rippon has proposed, is the flowing the water under 96 and toward Galveston Bay out there as a flood mitigation effort. Justin, because that's a massive project, no matter how you look at it, no matter where you put it, whether it's under 96 or elsewhere, but it has worked successfully in some communities. Would you support a project like that in League City?
Okay, so here's the thing. Let's go back to case-by-case basis. We've bitten off a lot with this bond program, and if you look at how many projects are going on and underway and getting ready to start construction, I couldn't tell you And I'll be completely honest, I am not a hydrologist or a civil engineer, like I said in the last. So I personally, nothing against Greg, but, throwing out these, these statements without studies, it's just, it's hard to say. I think that we need to finish up or get a good portion timely and without wasting money of what we're already doing, and then reassess. Because if everybody remembers, this bond came with Harvey as a measuring stick, which I hate to say it, but Harvey's not a fair measuring stick. Hey, it pointed out some problems and we put a lot of projects out there, but we really have to finish these and just reassess before we start, making, grand ideas that we're going to funnel all the water under 96 into the bay. I mean, water's water. I mean, if you get 18 foot of storm surge, I mean, it's gravity at this point. So my answer to that is the common sense answer is, I don't know. I don't know. We need to finish what we have on our plate. We've bitten off a lot.
Yeah, it is a lot that still waiting to get really, we see some movement, but it does take a while, John, on these type of projects. First, let me ask you on that proposal, because I saw you kind of smiling a little bit when I asked about that, of that, I call it the underwater roadway there. Would you be willing to even look at and research something like that?
Absolutely. I think I brought up in the first forum that, that we definitely need to look at a third leg. We're realizing now with the studies that are being done by the Clear Creek Watershed Authority and also the Dickinson Watershed Authorities, both of those studies that are going on right now are starting to come back with options to bypass those watersheds, because the amount of flow coming down Clear Creek starts 40 miles away, goes through Pearland and a lot of other developed areas. So that's adding an excessive amount of water before it ever gets to us. And we're getting in we get the double-edged sword. We not only get rainfall outflows from, upstream, but we also get tidal surge, which most of those areas don't have to deal with. So if there's nowhere for the water to go when it hits League City, the natural tendency is to back up. We really know that with Dickinson. Dickinson flows fairly well, but again, we saw during Harvey, which I agree with Justin, is not a good measuring stick. It's a 500-year flood, although we've, based on the history of the city, I think we've seen 3 of them in the last 50 years that are close to what we saw in Harvey. So even though that's a hard one to justify, we still realize that you can't move the water out of the city if there's no place for it to go. And if everything's, coming out of the banks at the 2 main discharges from the city, Clear Creek and Dickinson, we need an option. I agree with Justin. We need to finish some of these projects. We're working, part of the bond issue was with a comprehensive flood study and flood measuring devices so that we know what's flooding and when it's flooding. But we still should be planning for what's next. 5 years is seems like a long time, but I bet you if you talk to many of the council people, 4 years in their tenure, and they're wondering where the last 4 years went, and they're still dealing with some of the issues that were present when they sat in those seats initially. So
yeah, I just came from a council meeting the other night where an Ike issue came up.
Yeah,
and it was just surprising and I said, oh, they didn't mean to say that. No, it's Ike.
Yeah.
And I'm like, yikes. It's an infrastructure problem that still hasn't been adjusted yet. And that is the next question I was going to ask. So both of you, and I'll start with you, is that, bless you, by the way, that it's one thing, yes, you got to study and you got to make sure you're going to do the right project. But from that start to getting it done, there's times that what you studied 4 years ago, by the time you start to turn ground, it may be out of date or antiquated. And if you're going to be the policymaker or one of the policymakers, if elected to council, how do you address that part from the policy standpoint of making sure, one, you don't hold up the work, but at the same time, it's not going too fast to not be done well?
We need to set priorities and goals, milestones for ourselves, as because a lot of places, cities, businesses get into what they call paralysis to analysis or analysis paralysis, where they're studying it so much that they don't actually get anything done. And agreed, once you reach a certain point, what you were studying 3-4 years ago is not necessarily relevant because of, development or roads that have been implemented or, changes in traffic pattern or living, places for people. So when you set when you recognize a situation, you need to set a time frame that you're going to study it, and then you're going to move forward on it. I think currently one of our biggest problems is not necessarily working too fast. It's getting the resources to accomplish. There's a lot of construction going on around the Houston metropolitan area, and we're also bidding and competing for all those contractors and engineering firms. And so that's it's a tough situation. There's a lot changing, but it also costs you more and a little more time to get it done because of that.
Yeah, and you bring up a good point. I saw a study recently that depending on what market you're in, a major metropolitan like Houston, you have a similar project, similar costs, similar specs, everything, and they're paying up to 10% less than a city like League City.
Absolutely.
The number difference is quite shocking. So, Justin, the question to you too is that if you are elected to council, you're going to be setting policy on these things and making sure the projects get done. You had said earlier, let's get done what we got done going already first. How do you hold the folks that not only get it done quick, but done well, and not take too long just researching stuff?
I tell you what, I want to go back. I want to reach out to my colleague, John, and I appreciate, he said one of my favorite phrases, paralysis by analysis. And I tell you what, that is something that I can't say lived opposite of, is that, it's like being, so hungry, but you can't decide what you want to eat. So you starve to death. And, and I appreciate that. John touched my heart there a little bit, because it's not about the fact that if you make a wrong decision or if you make a mistake or something like that, it's how do you recover from it? And, and not being able to make a decision in a timely manner can actually be detrimental to your business or your policy or what you're trying to do. I would much rather make the wrong decision and recover from it. And I've proven that in my private sector skills. And that's probably the best thing that I could bring to the council.
Because sometimes you can just fix what the mistake was instead of just sitting and waiting.
Right. Exactly. Because like John said, things will pass you by. So he just, like I said, he reached out and touched me there a little bit. I was like, that's one of my favorite ones, Right. So anyways, thank you, John, for
the only one that ever, the only people I ever hear that turn from, quite frankly, are project managers. So I think that's why the two of you I like that phrase a lot, because it's the only time I ever hear it. Or project managers who say, we're just studying this too long. I have said over the years, I used to, do this with a county engineer. I said, if you looked at just the number of studies that sit on the shelves on any municipality, any city, any county, or any school board, just the studies that never got done, you'd probably save an entire forest.
And then you redo the studies over and over and over.
Right.
I like it. Well, and not to get too much, we're talking about Ike Dike and everything else. A lot of those infrastructure plans from the 1970s were introduced out there, and no one went just dust off of that plan. I think Bill Merrill did some, but he didn't dust off that plan and say, well, what can we do with this and make it to the next level? We've already got these legwork done.
I think I heard Councilman Nick Long one time say that he did a high school paper on 5 corners, and he actually got to see the 5 corners implemented when he was sitting on council. So that should tell you about how long it,
Yeah, he talked about it because it was bad back then too when he was going to school. Yeah, it's an interesting subject. In staying on flood drainage, I'll ask the same question to you, John, and then Justin, that I did before. What's the one flood and drainage question or issue you think is not getting addressed right now that needs to be a priority in the city of League City?
Who's first?
You, John.
I would say that with the amount of projects that we have done, being done right now, one of the things that I see that we seem to overlook and we seem to be doing a lot of is a lot of the ditches that we're doing are dirt banked ditches. And we all know what the soil's like here, and we know how it rains. And what I see is a lot of times when we expand a ditch, we get through the project, and within a year or 2 or 3 years, the banks are sliding back in, and they're causing flow issues again. Now, maybe it's as simple as gabion baskets, or, stone lined ditches, or, something to reinforce those banks, or, some kind of vegetation that's better suited to handle the bank erosion that we're facing. But we seem to be spending an inordinate amount of money redoing these ditches, on a regular basis. And, these are, it's a couple $1 million here and a couple $1 million there before you realize it. You got a lot of money you're talking about. And, it's not just the fact that it costs money to redo the ditches, it's what is impacted when the ditches collapse and they do cause flooding. So, that's one thing. I went through all the projects and saw how many dirt ditches that we were going to expand and widen. And then you look at the pictures and how much of it's sliding back into the flow again.
Yeah, kind of like the projects around my house. My wife has me fix over and over. So they just don't get done the right way. So finally, someone has to get hired that knows what they're talking about. I think most people can relate to that. Justin, for you, flood and drainage issues, do you think they're not getting as much attention as they should, that are a priority for you, and how would you approach it?
Okay, again, so I'm going to answer my question a little bit differently from John. I'm going to go back to the citizens and what the citizens have told me. And overwhelmingly, 2 issues: the rising of the creek and Bay Ridge. Those are the 2 that I hear the most. So I'm going to say those are the 2 hot topic issues. I know that Bay Ridge probably has 4 or 5 different phases of projects going on, and lots of millions of dollars. So anybody that lives in Bay Ridge, be patient. Let's execute. We're going to get that done. And then the rising of the creek being number 2, I've heard some stories like, oh, let's just dredge and widen the creek and all this stuff. And I'll be honest with you, I thought about that, and I went back and I looked at some studies from the UK, because we can learn from other people who has lots of rivers and streams and things like that. And they say, red alert, we've done this. It doesn't work. As a matter of fact, it might work temporarily, but it actually makes the problem worse because of the sediment shift, or you may give someone else your problem. Now, not being a hydrologist, not being a civil engineer, we have to rely on the experts to tell us what is the best thing. I've heard some of the best things is, allowing, maybe letting building up the banks, or, the vegetation or something like that is probably a better solution. Of course, you would have to ask those people along the creek, would you want us to build up these banks? I certainly wouldn't want to force that upon anybody, but those are the 2 main issues that I hear from the citizens after talking to hundreds and hundreds of people.
Yeah, it becomes a balancing act of what's best overall and what's also best for the folks that are right there already.
Right.
You do have to take that into consideration. You just can't say, forget it, we're going to save the whole city and forget your house.
Right.
Good for you. It becomes kind of a civil liberties issue,
right,
along the line. And if there's anything we're going to get from tonight, is that Justin is not a hydrologist.
I am not a hydrologist. Hey, John, are you a hydrologist? For the record.
No, I'm sure not.
No, we know that as well for the 2 of you guys. It's been good. So next topic up as we get into the last quarter hour here. And that's about expansion of city amenities, and that's parks, the recreation, whether you're talking about dog parks, or you're talking about the library, or parks overall. City. We just had the opening of League Park. Justin, I'll start with you. About $1 million on the park facelift, and then also about $1.5 million on the infrastructure improvements around the park, including flood control and the like. As you look at that, let me just ask specifically on that. Do you think that's money well spent?
TJ, I drove by there today because I saw some articles written about it, and for roughly $3 million, I'll be completely honest, it looks just about the same as it did when my kids used to play there. That's really all I want to say about that. That's a hard topic. I mean, I'm with $2 million towards the drainage, if that actually really works, then that's probably money well spent. But to me, there was no wow factor. I actually drove by today to make sure that I was informed and see it for myself, and it really didn't pop at me. $1 million of improvements. I'm a project manager. I know how to spend money, and I just don't think we got the best bang for the buck.
Same question for you, John. After taking a look at that, and again, it's pointed out about $1 million for the facelift, another $1.5 million for the infrastructure in and around that area, including down Park Avenue in the Healthy Historic District. But again, about $1 million just on the park renovations or facelift alone. Do you think that's money well spent?
I agree that it didn't add any significant appealing value to the park. We did, cover up some dirt issues that we had. We removed some grass and put in some gravel for more of a xeriscape type environment. But I just didn't see $1 million worth of facelift to the park. Now, again, with the drainage, that remains to be seen how it pans out when we get our first, significant rainfall after the construction. One of the things that I did notice was we seem to have lost some of that parking area that was on between Walding Station and the park. So, for some of the festivals that have been there in the past, that's been a highly utilized area. And I think that's, going to change how we go forward and in the operation of that park. I know there were a lot of people involved in the decision-making process on that. And, I'm not necessarily sure that it was, a lot of the ideas that were input by the various user groups were followed by the engineering or the architectural firms. But I definitely think that we could have done a better job with that park.
And in a public announcement, just to make sure, because I actually had someone ask me and said, what happened to the turtles? The turtles have moved to Heritage.
Yeah.
And by the way, I got to keep re-emphasizing it. The turtles were never supposed to be there in the first place. By the way.
Right.
It's supposed to be just a nice little pond, and then people started dumping the turtles there, including turtles that don't do well in water.
Right.
To point out.
That was quite a green pond too.
Like water. Yeah. So, in any case, another big topic is that keeps rearing up all the time. Big league dreams. John, we'll start with you on that. When you see crowds out there, okay,
yeah.
But it has never been the hotel booker that it was pitched to be many years ago. Is it, and I'm not sure what the city could do with that, or but on council, how would your approach be on moving forward with that project?
You're right. It definitely kind of caught me off guard when I heard that they had defaulted on the contract, or there's movement to get them to recognize the default on the contract. I guess I can kind of understand based on the economic impacts that COVID's had on us and the lack of tournaments that we were able to facilitate this year. In the past, I had seen tournaments there, but you're right. I didn't think that the facility was utilized enough to be a viable business alternative that it was originally sold to the city as. Those are areas where maybe when we're working in the future with those public-private agreements that we look, build in better escape clauses if they don't pan out in a certain period of time. But how we utilize it going forward is there an alternative or an option for another business partnership that with somebody where we can get out from underneath the maintenance and support and the reconstruction necessary to bring it back to a viable location, or is it something that we utilize? We're in need of baseball fields. There's no doubt about it. I mean, it's we're investing a lot of money on the west side in the new park, so maybe at least in the interim we can use those to alleviate some of the Chester Davis and other ball field issues that we're facing around the city, and without a major impact to the city, just getting it back to a safe and usable location. We may also want to look at it as, is it worth more commercial property than it is as a series of ball fields? That's a valuable corridor along 45 there. And is there a better way to generate tax revenue off of that land by, removing the entire system and going forward with something else? But those issues need to be addressed and looked at with that entire big league dreams.
Now, Justin, as we look at, and I can't remember the actual years of Big League Dreams. I mean, Jeff Harrison was mayor at the time when that project came in. Where do you think that that's been a payoff in the positive for the city? Obviously, knowing what we know now, that's come out recently.
Okay, so I'm gonna piggyback off of John a little bit. That one did catch me by surprise too when that article came out and I read about it. Apparently, it has not been fruitful for us, and and my heart's a little near and dear to that place because I have played softball there before when I first moved to League City. And during the COVID year, to be completely honest with you, I have not paid a whole lot of attention as to what goes on down there. I don't know what kind of crowds but apparently it's kind of been losing money. And the fact that it's $2 million behind and they're behind on payments, whoever's managing the park, I certainly applaud the council for making that decision to go ahead and push forward with that breach. That's the right thing to do. As far as what to do with it, I started trying to drum up a little bit of ideas today. Okay, so for one, I'll go back earlier to our statement. I said in oil and gas, if you have a bad deal and a bad contract, you go make a better contract. It's just business. So I think that's the first thing that we need to try to do. And then, maybe if that doesn't pan out so well for us, maybe to try to save it. Hopefully COVID ends and, maybe it'll start becoming a more fruitful venue for us. But with that being said, with that being said, I also thought about something like maybe, we don't have enough venues for seniors. And, maybe we can utilize a part of the park and get some Medicare funding or something for Silver Shoes. I don't know. It's a very incomplete idea, but I was trying to scramble for ideas how to solve this. It's apparently it's a money losing, a very complicated issue.
Yeah. And another one that seems to come up before council a lot, Justin, I'll stay with you, is the Butler Longhorn Museum. The city's put a lot of investment there. COVID has taken a big hit on it, on its visitations and the like. Is that something that the city just needs to find someone, a nonprofit of the like, and turn it over with and do what it can and just be done with it?
Be done with it? No. So with the Butler Longhorn, I think the taxpayers have eaten the whole cow, and the last thing we want them to do is choke on the tail. And but with that being said, since it's a beautiful place. I've visited there and I've got to talk to the directors of that place, and I understand what it is. It's absolutely rich in history. We need to keep it open. I don't want anything to get run down or closed in my city. But I think that, post COVID, hopefully we get there soon, is we need to allow them to have their own events and revenue generating so it can stand on its own. And that's my general stance on the Butler Longhorn. I actually love the place. When you walk into that place, the smell of that leather, and I'm done. I love that place. That cow leather. I love the smell of that place.
Yeah, I do too. It's the history behind it and everything else. It is. I wish it was more folks would get a chance to visit that for sure. And John, on the Butler Longhorn Museum, it just seems it can't really kind of get off its ground. Obviously it's a special events venue. It's really struggled this year, but is it time for I'm going to play off of a bad metaphor, I'm sure here, saying it just to let the cattle out of the barn. I'm trying to keep up with Justin the whole.
I understand, and there's so many puns.
Talk about a great line. That line was great. I love that.
Right.
You like that, TJ?
Yeah, I'm stealing that from you from now on.
Go for it, bro.
There are so many puns attached to this that I don't want to go down that road. But yes, I think judging the Butler Longhorn Museum in this economic environment is probably the worst time for us to look at it. I know that the contract's coming up in less than a year now, because I was at the council meeting where we discussed, the final year and seeing if they can make it through this final year. I don't think we should sign a long-term agreement going forward after this year, but I think maybe we should, look at, short-term agreement and see if there's progress. We can do it in smaller chunks, based on what we've dealt with in the past, to make sure we give them a fair if it didn't pan out up to this point and COVID hit, and it's probably the worst time for those contracts to be renegotiated. But I agree, we need to keep the history of the city. We just need to find as economically feasible way for that to happen, and maybe diversify the property a little bit. We're talking about our kayak situations and kayak rentals in that area. Anything that we can do to help support the entire park, maybe not just the museum itself. I think we should look at and find a way for it not to be a burden on the city as, you know, as much as it is a revenue generator, at least in self-supporting itself. You know,
I wonder though too, is that along with the historic schoolhouse and other amenities that maybe a marketing campaign that's just on the historic side of things, just to talk about communication and stuff outside, maybe
right.
that's
Yeah, that would be excellent. Justin and I actually just participated in a walk through a historic district a couple weeks ago during the campaign, where we did get to see a nice presentation of the one room schoolhouse and the old firehouse that's been converted into that museum. And yeah, it's you know, it definitely, you know, is the history of League City, and we don't want to forget where we came from. You know, it's the same with the Italian Heritage building that's been finished. You know, they really just gotten occupancy in the last few months at the most. And I'm not saying we should be investing money in it, but we need to give it an opportunity to actually see if it can stand and generate its own revenue in at least reasonable economic conditions. I don't think anybody would consider what we're doing now reasonable economic conditions.
And I don't want anyone to get wrong. Monica's done a great job out there on Butler. I want to praise her. She has, you know, put in blood, sweat, and tears for sure with keeping that operation going. And I feel for her for the year, because this was the year kind of things took the turn. We're seeing a good economy, and people wanted to have special events. We're starting, for example, weddings that want to have different look venues. So people are getting away from the churches and the like, and they want something that has a little uniqueness. And quite frankly, you know, Justin mentioned the smell of leather in there. You know, it had been unheard of 10 years ago for any bride to agree to get married in a place with a bunch of Longhorn heads hanging on the wall. But I can tell you now, it is actually something that would be an attraction.
Sure. Well, one thing we do need to be careful of, though, is that the Butler Longhorn Museum doesn't, compete with businesses that are in the area where they have an advantage because of the cost impact. And, you know, we don't want them stealing business from Butler's courtyard, you know, so it has to be a synergy there between the two organizations and the business aspect, as well as the history aspect of the city.
We talked briefly about this. Justin, let me come to you on this. You know, we got the west side, you know, ballparks being built. I call it the Chester Davis move in ways. Do you think the city's handling that the right way by taking on and just going ahead and moving forward with that project now and putting up the funds for it instead of waiting for the development that was supposed to happen originally?
You know what? This is the one where I'm going to take a huge pass on, because I haven't studied that one a whole lot. So this is my one. But, you know, ultimately, if it fits in budget and, you know, the taxpayers go for it, you know, we overwhelmingly go for it, then I'm typically for it as well. It's really about what the people want, and if we can find a way to fit it in. But I can't give you super specifics on it. I'm sorry. That's just one I wasn't studied up on. I admit it. I'm sorry, League City residents. That's just, it is what it is.
I know, and things will come up all the time. Trust me, I always throw a curveball at somebody along the way.
That's okay.
And I think
no problem.
trust me, it's a better answer than saying, I'd like to study them more. You know, that's always our,
Yeah,
I'll wait till I get there type of answer. So.
Right. Hey, TJ, hey, that's my last curveball, right?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, we're almost done. So yeah, it's your last curveball.
Perfect.
Maybe. I stress that.
Oh.
John, how about it on that particular issue as well?
You know, I think when we're developing stuff like that, we have a funding mechanism with the 4B taxes that, you know, we generate for sports and park impact fees that we get from homeowners. And as long as we're utilizing those funds as much as possible and not directly impacting the general revenue of the city and the operations, not as long as we're not pulling away from, you know, drainage projects or traffic projects, you know, there are funding mechanisms to utilize for those things. And, you know, those are issues that are basically equate to quality of life. I mean, you know, we, like it or not, have become a bedroom community, and keeping our youngsters here playing in our communities, making it opportunities to bring in, you know, tournaments or, you know, outside organizations to play baseball in our town could generate money too. So, you know, those are all, you know, I was a little disappointed, obviously, that the developer wasn't going to pay for that, but, you know, there are funding opportunities out there for us. That
and things change. You know, as I said, you know, and economy changes on a regular basis. It's great to think if it all worked out the way it has. I haven't seen one development ever the way it's announced, the way it ended.
Right.
It
never, yeah.
Yeah, it never works that way. Before we wrap up here, I'm gonna give each of you. So this is kind of a wild card. This is why Justin, I kind of said your last curveball. I think one of the things on social media, Justin, though, that it hit you during the campaign. I want to give you a chance to address because you took a lot of heat for the so-called flyer controversy, and I want to give you a chance to address that because you stayed out of social media on that. A lot of folks, you took a lot of hits on this thing. And I know that and by the way, and we privately have talked about this. It's not a story we would do. I just want folks to know I don't get into this tit for tat type story here, but I want to give you a chance of, you're accused of handing out certain flyers to certain people that looked one way based on the race and others and I wanted to give you a chance to address that right now on that because and John will give you some kind of similar thing on your own thing. I haven't heard anything like that with you, but since it took up so much energy toward the end of the campaign there, you took a lot of hits on it and people were fighting in and out. And I'm used to seeing that online. This was pretty vicious. I want to give you a chance to address that, what that situation was and why it was handled the way it was handled.
TJ, actually, I appreciate you asking that question and giving me the opportunity to explain that. I think that I guess everybody felt like that I was going to be the top guy. So there's been a big target on my back. And I want to let the League City residents know that sticking your neck out here is pretty vicious. It is pretty vicious. And they try to find anything on you. But you guys give me, whoever made those accusations, give me a lot more credit for being a better marketer than I actually am. We have given out by hand more than 11,000 cards, and that's by hand. We didn't mail them, by hand. And so when we got down to the end of the cards, I had a second set of cards that we didn't finish block walking, and there was really no rhyme or reason as to who in the world we handed them out to. We just handed them out. So you guys give me a lot more credit for being a master marketer than I actually am. We got to where we were through hard work, and that's it. That's it. It's hilarious how this stuff comes up. And, I think TJ even gave me more credit for being a better marketer than I actually am.
Well, and I do point out, I was talking in generic terms when I brought that up, that in marketing 101 of how things were.
Right.
And not in your case specifically, because I had no idea.
Right.
Although I do want to address one thing, because this comes up in League City, I think, more than any other politics. It's like someone says, vote for the conservative candidate, don't vote for the liberal candidate. I'm not sure who makes that definition out there. You did say conservative on that, and one of your flyers does say, vote out all the Democrats. By the way, I should just point out, I've checked the voter registration, at least not voter registration, how they voted in the primaries. I haven't found one Democrat in recent history that sits on the city council. So I just want to give you a chance to answer that part of it as well. Where does that come from?
So you mean the remove every Democrat?
Yeah, right.
That's that part. Okay, so I didn't come up with that either. I can't really, give credit to myself for that. It's, in these polarizing times and, kind of some of the things that have slid under the Democratic Party, and I'm not against Democrats, I'm not against liberals. I think there's room for us all here. It's just the policies. It's just the policies that have kind of slid in, under the Democratic Party that's turned into a voter base that I oppose. So I basically agreed to put that on my card because I believe that. And it doesn't mean remove them out of Texas. It just means I just don't feel like they belong. Those particular policies that I'm talking about, I just don't feel like that they belong on our municipal boards. Like Lieutenant Colonel Allen West said, everybody knows our GOP chair, Allen West said, we need to pay attention to the bottom of the ballot. And, these policies that I just don't agree with. And that's why it was on there.
And let me just, since you brought it up, let me just ask you, know of any candidates or people on council now that have policies like that you say, oh, because I haven't heard anyone yet talk about, for example, defund the police or anything like that that's either running or on council. So that's again, and I don't want to dwell on it too much, but I just
I know.
I think it's an issue. And John, I'm going to come to you kind of with a similar question.
Right. Okay. All right. So I'm feeling a little cornered now, and that's okay. I'll get my way through this. On council currently, no. I do believe that there is one candidate that, if you look at the Facebook page, it's been pretty sanitized. This person did very, very well, surprisingly. I don't want to go on smear campaigns. I'm trying not to do that. I'm trying to stay out of that. But there was one surprising candidate that came forward, and we've checked the voting records. We know what this person is. There was a few videos that came out, and people can go back on Facebook and look at them. They're still lingering, but they are sanitized from the page. And on our municipal government, that does concern me a little bit. But actually, if we're going to go ahead and back me in a corner, I'm going to go ahead and tell everybody in League City, even though I know that the council doesn't have direct control over this, but there is an appointment of a superintendent to the schools. I'm just going to go ahead and say it, that I do absolutely staunchly oppose. And I was there at the protest the other night.
Yeah, and I should point out on that particular subject, 9 a.m. tomorrow morning, we secured that today. Eric Williams, the lone finalist for superintendent, Clear Creek ISD, along with school board president Laura DuPont and school board member Scott Bowen, will be coming on with us for a town hall at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning to discuss that very topic. And trust me, they'll get the curveballs like I threw you here at the end.
Hey, thank you. I'm glad it's not just me. Hey, hit John now.
John, let me ask you though, because this has come up. My good friend Chris Stevens and I have just debated this topic ever since he was the chairman of the Republican Party of Galveston County. Then he ran for council, then withdrew at the last minute and the like. And I've always said, I said, why do we say, that should party affiliation matter at all? And because that becomes a definition for someone else. I know many a Democrat, many a Republican that are kind of moderate versus the extremes we see on the national level. But John, let me ask you, John, do you think it has a place on the local politics, even though it's a nonpartisan race, to point those out, that this person may be aligned with a political philosophy that maybe your voters won't agree with?
This goes beyond what I believe as whether it should be a partisan or nonpartisan race. It was the number one question asked by every voter in this city. Are you a Republican or are you a Democrat? And that right there should tell you that people are paying attention, and whether we run as partisan or nonpartisan in our election, the question's going to be asked and the people want to know. So, it's not something that we personally, I had a lot of say over. I tried to run the general campaign as nonpartisan as possible. I didn't align with any parties. But it was the number one question. I mean, and it all the way to the point where they were walking away into the polling locations and they turn around and say, are you a Republican or are you a Democrat?
Right.
And
it has come up. That's why I bring it up, because there are folks who will argue that it doesn't matter. But there are also people who argue that say, well, asking a candidate's age doesn't matter, or the like as well. And I say, whatever the voters think should be asked.
Exactly.
Yeah, go ahead, Justin. I see your hand raised.
Yeah, I do. I want to echo John's statement. He is 100% correct. We worked the polls 80% of the time for 3 straight weeks, and he is absolutely right. That is the number one question. So in 2020, party did matter.
Yeah.
It absolutely mattered. And, you try to be nonpartisan and maybe just use the word conservative, maybe that's a signal, but people straight up say Republican or Democrat thousands and thousands of times.
I guess it'd be like me asking if you're a Longhorn or a Sooner.
Yeah.
It doesn't.
You just went right on by that Aggie thing, didn't you, TJ?
Do what? What was that, John?
You went right on by the Aggie.
The Aggie stuff I don't get into. I tolerate the Aggies. It's the Sooners I can't stand. No, I'm just joking. For me, it's a. But again, too, if the voters are asking that question, I always argue, well, if the voters are asking it, you may think it's unfair, but I always go by the line. Matt Doyle told me this once. He said the voters are always right. And if they're going to ask that question, show the respect. Now, if you think your answer is one that they're not going to like, you need to make the argument, yes, I may be in this party, but this is what I believe in. And then maybe you convince them to come your way on that. But it does, if the voters think that it matters, it matters. Go ahead, Justin.
You got me stirred up now. Sorry, I don't want to make this.
I told you. That's why I
much.
said, oh, wait, there is going to be kind of a curveball coming, but.
Right. Well, now you got me stirred up, man. So I guess where I understand why the voters want to know, especially in 2020, is because even with a nonpartisan issue like flooding, growth, and drainage, your party even kind of tells you in a set of ideology as to how you're going to handle that. If you refer back to an hour or so ago, where I said, Democrats and Republicans both know how to spend money, and but it's how do you spend it? And I mean, it just tells people almost everything about you. How do you align with your values? And that's how I feel, and I think that's why the voters. Well, municipal election, we had I think a record turnout, right, John? Right, TJ? We had a record turnout for municipal voters. It was really good, about almost 40,000, and that was really good. So I think we're getting the best selections in these runoffs. But they want to know all the way down, for school board, for municipals, where there's not a D or a R next to your name, but what is your ideology? What can you tell me that's going to make me vote for you? And I think that us working at the polls, and everybody did a great job. We got a high turnout. We really did, as to where people typically skip it.
And John, I'll have you the last word on that topic there, since Justin raised his hand. If you have anything else you want to say on that.
No, I think that whoever runs, whatever their principles are, I believe that they should own those principles. Don't run from them. If you have a good argument as to why you believe one way or another, whether you're Republican or Democrat, own it and sell that argument to the people. Don't try to hide from it. Especially, if you're taking support from other, parties or some, people in the party. So I just, at some point, it may not be popular to be a Republican. I grew up in Maryland. I was a registered Republican, and trust me, I gave up my right to a primary election every year for 18 years before I left the state, because being a Republican in Maryland was not a popular party, but it was my beliefs and my philosophy, and I stuck to that regardless of how it was popular or not.
Well, and one of the things is that it's been my experience in watching the sways in this county back and forth here. This question was important to folks on municipal level back in the day when the Democrats controlled the party, and we can hear every definition that's out there. Again, it comes down to the individual candidates. That's why we do these forums. Hear where you stand on the policies, including this topic here as well. So thank you both for being on with us. I know we went way long. That's the way it always goes. I apologize, but it was a good discussion tonight. Thank you all for being a part of it here. Again, just as a reminder to you folks, we will at 9 a.m. tomorrow morning have on Eric Williams, the lone finalist for the Clear Creek ISD superintendent's job. And we have been told that Dr. Laura DuPont, the president of the school board, and Scott Bowen, who's the member of the school board who actually made the motion to hire Eric Williams and spoke highly of him, will be on with us tomorrow. And we've taken a lot of questions already, but that's 9 a.m., around 9 a.m. here on I-45 now. And now we get to the part of our forum here tonight in which we let each of the candidates give their 3-minute elevator pitch. And Justin, you are up first. 3 minutes, sir, to make your pitch to the voters.
Okay. All right. So I won't take 3 minutes. I know we need to wrap this up. So my plea to the voters is that I know that everyone has election fatigue, but this is really, really important. And for those who do not already know me, my name is Justin Hicks. I'm a conservative. I'm a veteran. I'm a patriot. I'm a concerned League City resident. I'm a father of 4 and a devoted husband. When you need someone to represent the people of League City, consider voting for someone who has courage and is unafraid. And I'm asking you guys to vote for the guy that has already taken and executed the oath to uphold and defend the Constitution 3 times above all. And I would like to take that oath a 4th time for League City. So please come out during the early voting and the election dates and vote for Justin Hicks. I appreciate your time.
Justin, thanks a lot. We appreciate your time. John, before I come to you, I'm going to have you, there you go, unmute your mic. Unmute yours, and then we'll come back to you here. Up to 3 minutes for you, John, to make your final pitch to voters.
Okay, mine's also going to be short and sweet. First off, I'd like to thank everyone who came out and supported me in the general election and point out that we are in a runoff election. The differences between me and the candidate that I'm running against couldn't be any more clearer. I've been involved for 10 years. I've actually, attended meetings and stepped up when necessary during a national emergency within the city. And volunteered even just for Hometown Heroes Senior Breakfast with the Lions Club. Not that I'm a member, but it's just good to give back to the city in any way you can. I'd like to thank those who've endorsed me, the League City Police Officers Association, League City Firefighters Association, Dr. Pat McGinnis from the Galveston County Republican Party has come out and supported me now. Also, Commissioner Ken Clark and Commissioner Daryl Apfel have also graciously endorsed me in this runoff election, as well as several League City Council members, present and past. It really warms my heart to know that these people recognize what I've done with the city. Yes, I've been controversial along the way. I'm never going to hide from that. I'm a passionate guy. I believe in fighting for what's right. I'm never going to run from that. That's just who I am. But I always make sure that when I present an argument, it's a logic-based argument with facts and figures, and that it's just not an emotional argument. So again, thank you, everybody. Please come out and vote with the 2 weeks of early voting for runoff and the runoff date of December 15th. Every vote counts, and it's a matter of getting everyone out there to vote to make sure that I'm able to go forward on seat 4. Thank you very much.
Thank you, John, and thank you, Justin, both. And again, as you can see, we have it on the screen there. That's John Bowen's website, jdlc2020.com. You can find out more where he stands on the issue. And then Justin's Facebook page, Justin Hicks for League City Council, is there for you to take a look at as well to find out where they are on the issue. So we thank you both for coming on with us tonight. Again, for those of you who joined us and didn't catch what we said earlier, Rachel McAdam, who's John's opponent in the position 4 race, after initially agreeing to be part of this, then later said she had a scheduling conflict and could not make it for tonight. And Justin's opponent, Wes Torn, we went back and forth and I just couldn't get a date. He's working out of state right now and couldn't get a date or time. We did on both those candidates try to accommodate as best as possible to be, as part of these forums. We're going to actually do 2 separate forums with Rachel and John on one and Justin and Wes on the other. Unfortunately, we couldn't make that happen. We respect everyone's decision. We wish they could have been here tonight, but we did try to make it work. The holiday doesn't help out, and moved up the early voting period there. Both of you, thank you so much for coming on with us tonight. Thank you again to the League City Regional Chamber of Commerce, Dewan Claiborne, for coming on with us earlier tonight, and the Chamber obviously co-hosting these forums with us tonight. As soon as we are wrapped up here, you can watch the replay of this to go over the questions you have there. And the candidates, as I always encourage the candidates to do, go on the page here, and there'll be questions of you and answer those throughout as well. Justin, John, thank y'all for both being on with us. I appreciate it.
Thank you, TJ.
We'll be seeing you at the polls, and we'll be talking to you election night. We will have election night coverage here on I-45 Now. I'm TJ Aulds, I-45 News.